my youngest says, growing up with mum on the radio is different to the way it is now. Radio kind of was everything.
Yeah.
I got a phone call to say that something terrible had happened and I needed to come home. When I went to Triple M, which is not that long ago, the vitriol, because I'm quite a, in radio in Brisbane, I'm quite a female chick. The vitriol, and people would say things, I now know why a husband killed himself. There's one lovely thing about radio in Brisbane is that all of the females on air on all of the stations are good friends and support each other.
What a delight to see you walking down my front pathway.
I love it. I love it.
You are, I'm very lucky in that I've got to see not the start of the arc of your career, but I managed to witness from a pretty early part of the launch phase.
Yeah, you did.
Where you were. Do you remember the first morning we met? So I've been thinking a lot about this.
I think you were doing you were overnights or late nights.
I was.
And you were really trying, like you were wanting to get into and be, and
it was a Sunday morning.
Really?
Oh no, it was a Monday morning. It was a Monday morning.
I never went in on a weekend.
No. It was a Monday morning, and you were producing.
Yeah,
breakfast.
So Donna was on.
Yes.
And and that was only a very short period of time. And then they did that great thing that they do to women in commercial radio, which hasn't really changed a huge amount, where they the woman can slide out and another one can come in. And that happened, 4 times with Jamie and Skippy. And I was number 2.
Wow.
And I lasted 10 years. Look at me go.
It was about 4 in the morning. It was about 4 in the morning, and it was you walked into the sound of a Bryan Adams or Celine Dion song, or I don't know. There was
Whitney.
There was a lot of that. This mid-90s. Yeah, it was mid-90s. And I'd only just started. I think I was George's age. So George is 22 now. So I was about her age doing that 6 nights a week.
Yeah.
And no idea how anything worked. None at all.
Yeah, but you were always so enthusiastic. And this is terrible because, I should be a little bit more progressive, but you will always be known to me as Spidey.
No, that's okay. We always remember each other by the first names that we met, and FM radio stick to people.
And your hair.
I had very long hair.
You had very long hair.
I was playing, the guitars, that guitar was around at the time. The middle one was around at the time. So the guitars are still in the room.
And I remember looking at you putting away your CDs at the end of the shift and me just going, I want that hair.
I have pretty good hair. I've been lucky. Yeah. Lately it's been I'm 52 now. So lately the hair's been going we've fought a pretty good fight. But up here on the Temple region, we might just see off into the sunset there, buddy. I might just keep it long for a bit and see what happens. But I remember that first couple of weeks, you're right, it wasn't very long. And watching how Donna was there, or Donna Lynch, who was a staple and had seen the station from the switch from AM to FM and had seen the kind of FM ratings that people
only dreamt of.
Sing songs about now,
28 share.
Crazy, literally owning a city kind of station ratings.
Yeah.
And then
gone.
You're gone. And I had never seen that sort of personnel movement ever before. And it happened so quick, and I didn't quite understand it. Had you seen that sort of thing before? You'd done a bit of TV and you'd been...
Not like that. That was probably my first really terrible one. And we'd done an OB. We were doing outside broadcasts at schools at that stage, and we were told to not come back to the station. And so it was Jamie, Skippy, myself and Ben Dark, Bush Pig. And we went to Bush Pig's house on Enogra Terrace in Paddington. We were told not to come back, and she went back to the station. So she was totally blindsided too. It was just awful. So awful.
And that was that.
And and I only found this out when I was researching for my book, is that Donna was the first woman on commercial radio in Canberra. She was the first one to be part of a team. She is so groundbreaking, and I see her a little bit around, and I hope she gets a copy of the book. And if she doesn't, I'll certainly say to her, wow, mate, you were one of a lot of women in the commercial media who just friggin' did it for the rest of us.
Pushed in really hard.
Yeah, right.
To do it. Yeah. And I remember just being told at the time from someone at the station, because I was asking around, like, well,
what happened to Donna?
Was that coming? Like, was it something? And I won't say who, but let's bear in mind, it was a very different time.
It was a very different.
This is what, 96?
Yeah,
96. And the person at the station, and I'll never forget this, they said, knock, knock. I said, who's there? They said, Donna. I said, Donna who? That's radio.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, in one knock, knock joke, I've just learned a lot about how brutal this industry is.
Yeah.
And like in the middle of a year when someone's still got a mortgage to pay and, plans and a life that they've built, and they're known so publicly as this person, to the point where when you've got 28 share in Brisbane, people shout your name when you're walking down the street, right? And then the next day, they're going to shout her name walking down the street, and she's got no job.
And look, I know, and I have been criticized for this a lot in my career, but it happens to a lot more women. It just does. And it's still happening, right? And I'm trying to work out why. And I just think it's cultural sexism. And also, I do think in our industry, there are still a lot of the same people who are in the same jobs, although they are shifting now.
Yeah.
But it was done a certain way.
Yeah.
And, it's sad.
It's a microcosm, I think, possibly of how perhaps something like our country is run, and that there was a small crew of men who worked either at a station here in Sydney called 2Day FM or in Melbourne called Fox FM, and they had such unbelievable success on
power
margins like you couldn't believe, like money flying out of their money holes, that then as they spread around the country, well, we've always done it this way. This is what works. We'd never question each other. Let's go. And I understand that. They had no reason to believe any other way. This is how we've always done it. I remember someone give me a copy of Thick Face Black Heart.
Oh, yes, me too.
Oh, your face lit up. It's like, oh, this is the thing. Like, this is how we run the shit.
The most recent one was, what's the cheese and the mouse?
Oh, Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah, that's the new version. Yeah, that's not that we're going to take you out and kill you. That's we're going to change your life in the most awful way.
Yeah. And so that's how it was. And now these people who came up under as assistants and stuff like that now run the show. So when I think about in Queensland, for example, people are like, what's up? It was like, that's a guy who was, when he was 20, was working with Bjelke Peterson and was a part of a fiefdom that did whatever it wanted.
Yeah, that's.
And now he is still a seat in Parliament and knows everyone he's always known. Why would he ever change?
No, that's.
Of course, that's how he has operated, because that's how it's operated for 40 years.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like almost that. I saw it, firsthand in Brisbane. But then again, when I came back into breakfast with Abby, who I adore, because she will not fucking fuck around, That's some wild stuff that happened to her. And
yeah, and I'm quite good friends with Abs, and look, there's one lovely thing about radio in Brisbane is that all of the females on air on all of the stations are good friends and support each other.
Which is wild, particularly like someone who I started with, Marnie Tithridge. I think there was a point when you replaced her.
Yeah, I did.
And people are trying to like pit you against each other, and like, she's my mate.
Yeah, and I still friends, like I only spoke to her a couple of weeks ago and she went through a really rough time, and I was sort of going, come on, mate, you're good. And like, again, she's in the book too, because I just won't. That the fight for women in the commercial radio industry has been really hard. So I'm not I'll never do that. I'll never stand there and have a crack at someone else, because what we do is not who we are. Who we are human beings, and how you want to behave and treat someone, that's what matters. The fact you're on radio and you've been quite successful in your own little world. But, my husband, Sean, who was at Fox FM in that huge days, halcyon days, when I married him and he was negotiating my contract because I had been sacked, I had been walked from 97.3, and he was, trying to navigate all this stuff for me. And and he was a content director and he was a national promotions guy. And he goes, I had no idea how tough it was for talent. I'm like, are you right? So, I think there was this us and them. And, we in the 90s in Melbourne, which is where I was too, on my way up, I was at Fox in those times and B105. Like, we did live in a rarefied air. And in my book, one of my sons, my youngest, because each of the boys write a chapter at the end, and my youngest says, growing up with mum on the radio is different to the way it is now. Radio kind of was everything.
Yeah.
And everyone knew the stories and now he's kind of not as upset by it and I don't talk about them as much. But yeah, it's true. In the day, it was everything.
To think about, I got very lucky in that I did have some exposure, and in Brisbane, we went down to Melbourne on the holiday once, and we hung out at the old Fox building on St Kilda Road, and it was a Friday night, and it was all happening. It was a rooftop. There were people who were still hanging out. It was a very, very, very different scene because it was the hottest place ever.
To be.
Yeah,
it was.
And it was late night. Phil was on air. Jackie was on air doing the Hot 30 national show. It was like, fucking hell, man. This is like...
Grubby and Dee Dee.
This is on. It was so freaking... exciting.
It was exciting. Barry Bissell.
Oh, Barry.
I don't even know where he is now. Probably still in Melbourne somewhere.
He handed me the Take 40 torch after he turned 60. Yeah, radio, I don't think radio's going anywhere. I think radio in Australia might have, I don't know, maybe perhaps recently pushed it to places that it may not be able to continue, as far as taste and boundary and economics goes. I think we might see somewhat of a correction. But
well, I always said, I think it was probably about between 5 and 10 years ago, I said when everything was happening with newspapers and magazines and television, and we were still seeming to be untouched. And I remember it was at the Radio Awards, and I said, the way we will come undone is if we eat ourselves.
Right.
And that's what we've done. And at the moment, we're starting to now maneuver away from that. And I will say that ARN, who are in the news for all the other reasons, the decision to bring us back in Brisbane is actually going to be part of the saving grace.
Yeah.
Because it's going back to what radio always was, which is parochial, local, and issues that affect, and Queensland particularly, but Adelaide too.
I would say everywhere. I talked with Merrick about this, and there was something about when I was doing that overnight shift. And this is what I really miss about live television, because it's just too expensive to make anymore. The thing that people just loved about live radio, even at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday night, people will call up and it was just like, oh, someone else is here. Yeah. I'm not alone.
Yeah, the bakers.
I'm baking, or I'm spending the night at home with my child for the first time in a house by myself. I'm not alone. Someone else is awake. Someone else is here in my city with me. I'm okay.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that radio can be. And unfortunately, television has, forgotten a lot of that. And when you network, which we've seen work and not work on some ways, when you network, you lose that, unfortunately. It doesn't have that kind of same flavor. But that, I think for me, that's the connection that radio will always have. I'm kind of interested because I was doing a podcast with Yumi at Kiss FM here in Sydney. And I would just show up, this is maybe 2 years ago, we'd show up every week to do it. Just less people at desks every week. When you think about a creative space, creative industry like radio, for example, what would you have to say about investing in talent and a talent pipeline?
Oh, I think there are two really big things that are going to need to be reconstructed or demolished. And I remember this, it would have been about 10 years ago, and it was a story that came out of a regional market where a number one sales rep was up against a breakfast announcer in terms of they were fighting each other as to who was going to be right. And the company chose the sales rep. And the breakfast announcer lost their job. And in that moment, everything shifted.
Wow.
And that has actually followed on. So I think the silos of the way that we've done it are really changing or have to change. And that's one of the great things about us coming back into Brisbane is we're saying we want to do this differently, but not just, we want to do content differently, but we want to do the whole thing. Because if you keep doing the same stuff the same way, what's that a phrase? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Really? So that is changing, and I think Brisbane, we've got a really great opportunity to show that it can be done because we can deal with clients and so on, and that's absolutely my mantra at the moment. There's that. And then to your point about the pipeline is, I started as a producer at Fox FM in Melbourne, and Sean, who then became my husband, was my boss. And there was this idea that if you showed any talent, you would be either sent to Darwin, Hobart, or Canberra. And I was sent to Hobart. And Sean sent me to Hobart and said, with, Paul Thompson and all the other radio guys, Greg Smith, on their approval. And
so Rob is mentioning names of people that were on the ground when they flicked the switch on FM.
Yes, like they are the really big radio people. And I went to Hobart and I did breakfast radio in Hobart and I read the news as well as an announcer, and Greg Smith would come down and we'd go into the studio and he would really train us.
Yeah.
And so there was this idea that you go from there. And so from there, I went to B105 as a producer. And then, as you said, Donna was moved out. I was moved in. I don't know if that was always their plan. Maybe. I wasn't privy to it and I didn't expect it. But yeah, it was, you were going to keep going up. But those radio people don't exist.
You're right.
In the same way, because in the 90s, it was comedians.
Yeah.
So it all had to have a funny person. And then it was reality TV people. And that's not to say some of those haven't gone on to have incredible careers like Chrissy Swan, but the art of radio and the storytelling and the things that actually the commitment that we learnt from, I sat next to and with Jamie recently dying, I've been talking a lot and reminiscing a lot about him. He was one of the greatest storytellers
ever.
And he would take, I've got goosebumps. He would take this tiny idea and then weave it in a way that you just did not know what was coming next. And I got to learn from that. And I did. And it was interesting because Sean my husband Sean had tattooed on his wrist, listen. And I believe that is the greatest skill of radio. Yeah, we talk for a living, but the art is in listening and absorbing and not butting in to wait. And those are the skills you learn when you're sent out bush and I started at 2WEB in Burke. I got a cadetship in the newsroom and it was such a wonderful, it's one of the smallest, like Burke's only 3,500, but their coverage area is South Australia, Queensland and New South Wales. So huge coverage area. But you
guys in the day where you're just like, how many watts do you want the transmitter? Who cares? Yeah. No one lives here. Right. We're not going to get any cancer calls. Turn the fucking thing up and it doesn't matter.
But people would, Friday night at the pub, you were held accountable for the things you said.
Right. Yeah.
So even though we had this massive listening area, there was also 3,500 people who were really invested. And it was such a great grounding to then when I did tell stories, go, yeah, put some mayo on it by all means, but you got to hold value to what you say. And, and I think that's probably why I've lasted for 37 years.
The other thing I think about when I think about how they do radio now and the talent pipeline, and then when I was there at 4 a.m. and the morning you came in for the first time, there's probably about 120 other people doing exactly the same thing around the country.
Oh, yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
The overnight shift, just being terrible in the middle of the night, just being shit.
To learn how to do it.
Working badly, playing the wrong song, playing no songs, letting the emergency tape go on. I've done all those things.
Yeah.
But it's the flight miles that it takes to get it right. You don't just show up with it done. Nor, you can be upset at me all you like if you run this kind of school, nor can you pay 20-something grand to go to a school that will take your money and give you a piece of paper and go, great, off you go. Yeah. You're good to go. You haven't done the volume. It's just volume. It's the only thing, repetitive. You just got to do it and scrutinize yourself along the way.
Oh, and be scrutinized. Yeah. Like we,
oh my God.
It's the amount that
let's talk about an air check. So what do you want? Okay, so people think, they go, oh, no, at work, I had a performance review today. Okay, I'm going to take your performance review and I'm going to go all in with an air check.
We have to listen to yourself and be told how shit you are and over something that you cannot change.
Mm-hmm. Robin, I want you to count how many times you say the word like in this break. Are you ready? You got a piece of paper and a pen? Go. Play. I had someone do that to me once. I won't say their name. And I'm like, I had to make tally marks. I just did it then.
See?
You've made your point. I say that word too much. Stop it. Okay.
And do you remember what the buzzword for those words were?
No, I don't.
Crutch.
All right.
What's your crutch word?
Fair enough. They changed all the time.
Yeah, I know.
I couldn't use the word like.
I know. It
becomes
becomes something else because you're thinking and speaking at the same time.
That's what it takes. It takes that amount of time. And so when people go, oh, right, you just wake up early and talk. Easy job. No, man.
No.
There's so much more to it. We talked briefly about him, but let's he's just passed away maybe less than a month ago, just over a month ago. Jamie Dunn passed away. For people who don't know, they're familiar. He was the man who also was, the man behind Aggro.
Mm-hmm.
And so many other things.
Hectopascals. Do you remember
Yes.
his weatherman?
He had an entire massive career as a musician.
Yeah. Jamie Come Home, his song.
Yeah, he was a huge superstar. What do people need to know about what it was like to work with someone like Jamie Dunn?
I think if he liked you, he loved you for life. If he didn't like you, he hated you for life. Money was incredibly important to him. So he would every $20 if he did something for $20, he'd go and pay it off the house and make a big thing of going, well, that's going on the house. I'm like, which one, buddy? You've got about 10. But he was this incredibly kind, generous. When we got sacked, there was a little recording that he did when we came back saying how glad he was that we'd come back on the air. About a week or maybe 2 weeks before he died, he sent me a box to make a flamingo.
Hello.
And all the notes he ever sent you, he drew a self-portrait.
Yeah.
So there's a picture of him and then this lovely note. But he was never he didn't, I think in the note he was kind of like, he wasn't going, oh, I'm so proud of you or any of that sort of stuff. He'd go, I hope you recognize what a big thing this is.
Yeah.
So he was so in love when he died. His wife, Marie, I've been talking to a little bit because we pushed and pushed with the help of Peter Clay, who is his kind of background guy for years and years.
Peter Clay now runs the most successful radio station in the country.
And he's a lovely man.
Generously.
Lovely, lovely man. And he pushed really hard to bring all the bits together so that we've relaunched Wendy ice cream, the Aggro ice cream through Wendy's Milk Bar. And that's around the country for 2 months. So, but I learnt humility.
Mm.
I learnt... we would do the outside broadcast at the end of every year for the Royal Children's Hospital, and Jamie would be going. So many people knew him because he'd just pop in with the puppet, to make someone's day. Ranger Stacey said to me only last week, one of the last conversations she had with him, where he said, "We've never had a fight, Stace." And he was, as I said, if he loved you, he loved you. But in terms of radio, he taught me that ego will get you nowhere. Such a valuable lesson. Who you are is not what you do. He did some stuff. He did a lot of stuff behind the scenes. So my mum was for a long, long time, years and years, very active in the Indigenous community. She would drive up to Broome and work with the sisters up there who were dealing with Indigenous communities, and she would try and help them to create video stories or things so that their culture wasn't lost. And Jamie would go scouring through secondhand stores and find breastplates that were these horrendous part of our history, where Indigenous people had to wear them as slaves. And so he would go and buy them and give them to my mum so she could return them to country.
Wow.
Right? Because that's what he cared. He wanted to do the right thing. Now, no one knows that stuff because it wasn't that important for him to get the accolade. So, I think he had complicated relationships with his children. Not all of his kids were at his very private wake. He wrote the list of the people that could come and who couldn't come, and I was very surprised and saddened at the ones that were not allowed to come. So, you know, every time I talk about Jamie, I just go, he was the greatest, wonderful storyteller, beautiful, big heart, and he was also a bugger.
Yeah.
He's a bastard, you know, so I don't know. I'm very, very, very privileged, and I would not be sitting here now if it had not been for Jamie Dunn.
Probably me neither. He gave us pretty good pep talks because I was getting a bit disheartened, you know, and like I was given the Tonight Show in Brisbane, and I was supposed to start the next week. I signed the contract on a Monday. On a Thursday, they told me, actually, no, we're not doing that. We're going to network Ugly Phil. And the next morning, by the way, you're back on at 1 a.m. And I was so heartbroken, I didn't even open the mic for hours. I didn't open the mic. I just played music the whole night long. I couldn't bring myself to speak. Yeah. Just panelled. And
wasn't that with Phil and Jackie?
Yeah. It was Phil and Jackie. And
look what you sacrificed, my friend.
But bless him, both him and Skip that morning, they must have got told, all right? Both him and Skip came in separately and they just sat with me.
Yeah.
And this kind of went, I was the punchline of the joke that time. It was like, that's radio.
Yeah.
And
But also, and Skippy's another one, like I phoned him as soon as, I found out in a car park by Channel 7 ringing me to say that Jamie had died. And I literally burst into tears because I was like, no. And then I rang Skippy, who was on Kangaroo Island, I think, or somewhere in the middle of bloody nowhere.
Wow.
And, you know, bless him, he took my call and he just said, you know, I rang him for his birthday. And I said, did you? Because I remember a fight where Jamie threw a cart at Skippy's head and then 3 minutes later the mics went on and off we went. Like, you know, they love to hate each other, but they also recognise that they needed each other to continue the great success of the B105 Morning Crew. So it doesn't surprise me that both of those men stood up and helped you.
As you mentioned that just then, I remember being in the first production booth, which was next to our program director's office, and I was putting something away in there, and there was a song on. This is before automation, so I had 1 minute and 15 seconds to get back to the studio to push the next button. And I just heard your voice scream at the top of your lungs, Jamie, no! Yeah. And an award, Daryl Misson, great audio director of the year award, flew off the wall. Because on the other side of the wall,
okay, yeah,
like these two men had come together with such force,
and I couldn't even tell you what over now. It's just insanity. But anyway, it doesn't matter. That's the passion, though, right?
Yeah. But that's the unbelievable thing about it. I know Skip's written about it, but as you mentioned, less than 5 minutes later, the news break ends. Those guys are on air, and
off we go.
We're on.
Yeah,
and that just showed me, it's like, wow.
So that's the other thing I'd say about both of them, but professionalism. You know, Jamie never turned up late either, neither did Skippy. And Skip taught me about knowing your city and loving your city.
Yeah, you got it.
And you know, in all the things that have happened in radio, and as I said in the beginning, we're now kind of coming back full circle because it does matter. It does matter that you're talking about, you know, the Broncos or the Dolphins or whatever, which is the Brisbane thing.
What you're building there over those years through that intimacy, which Ian Skipping was describing, is you're building the thing which now people are discovering makes so much money in podcasts, is the parasocial relationship. It is. These are the friends that I have that are with me every day when I'm stuck on Milton Road, when I'm there like trying to get through North Lakes on the way to, like, I've still got an hour to go before I even get to the, you know, gateway turn off. I'm just stuck here. These are the people that are with me every day in my car.
That's true.
And that's all well and good when things are great. When you've got kids coming, it's like, we're hearing about Robin having babies. This is great. We want to know all about it. I don't know. People feel they know you, such and such. You've gone through periods of like astonishing grief and astounding tragedy. How did you navigate that relationship? How did you tell me about? Because it was a very public way to do it. You could have chosen not to. What was your reason?
Well, I couldn't really, because of all the reasons we've just talked about. Like I I couldn't. I have built my career on being my authentic self. And in all of the stuff that's happened, you know, when I thought the worst thing that could have occurred in my life was being walked from B105 with a box when it was my time to go, I have chosen to always just be who I am and do what I think and say what I feel. It was interesting, though, with the suicide of Tony, my boy's dad. I had 5 weeks off, and there was a lot of pressure on me on the day that it happened from his father to say that he'd had a heart attack. And I rang his counsellor and I said, I'm really sorry. I know you've been working very closely with him, but he's taken his own life. I don't have time, but you have to tell me how to tell my kids, because my father had died when I was 11 of a heart attack during the night, and I so remember my mother waking me and giving me that information. So I knew how profound that moment was going to be. And his advice was be age appropriate, but be honest.
Right.
And so that then became my mantra to not only teach and parent my children, but also what I was going to do on air. And you know what happened? It was really interesting. It happened on a Monday. I'd finished the show. I'd gone home. We had started a trial separation. We'd been separated within the house for 9 months, but we'd finally got to the point where Tony was willing for him to do one weekend and for me to go away and vice versa. And this was the first weekend he did at home, and I was staying on a friend's houseboat at Kangaroo Point Cliffs. And I went back to the houseboat because it had been like a real war zone with him. And so I thought, I'm just going to have a sleep. I'm just going to chill. And I got a phone call to say that something terrible had happened and I needed to come home. And so I raced home, and one of the people that had been rung was one of his best mates, but his wife was a nurse in Kenmore, and she had been called, and she raced out screaming, Tony's done something to himself. So word started to spread really quickly.
Yeah.
And so there was this thing where I had to manage this from the get-go. My number one thing was I needed to get my kids home without them knowing. Yeah. I had to tell them. And the second thing was how we're going to manage this, because it was not taking long at all. And for all those reasons around Brisbane being 2 degrees of separation and radio matting, whatever, that I then needed to really find a way of dealing with this. And so one of the phone calls I made that day was to our executive producer, Ruth, who is still a very dear friend of mine. And I said, mate, this is what's happened. I need 24 hours to just navigate through. I swear to you, one of the bravest things I think any radio people have ever done is Terry and Bob and Ruth and our team going on their air the next day, knowing but not saying anything, just saying, look, something's come up with Rob. And then the following day, speaking it, I kind of worked out to Ruth, I said, look, say something like this. I've never listened to that show, but they did it. And then this amazing avalanche of things happened. And the amount of letters, cards, emails, flowers, food, just this outpouring of love, which I did not anticipate. And Ruth would come every day to the house and just deliver just carloads of beautiful things, but also people saying, I feel so bad. I was in this place. I didn't go through it. And that also then happened. So I was off for 5 weeks, and then I went back because my middle son, who was 12, said, Mum, you're using too many words on us. Can you go back to radio? I went fair. And also the boys needed to have everything to be normal, and that was normal. So, and again, if you look up on YouTube, you can see the day I returned, and all morning they just said, look, you don't even have to be if you don't want to, but at 8 o'clock, do you want to say something? And I'd scripted it, and then I just kind of did it, and you can see, and it's actually in my book, we've used part of the recording of that day, and I just was like, I'm here, and I have to get my kids through this. I have to go through this. Radio has been my absolute staple. So I am going to turn up and I'm going to do it. And that's what I did, and that's what we did. And look, don't get me wrong, Sarah Bareilles' Brave, the song, had just come out, and that became my freaking mantra. And sometimes it would come on and I'd just be like, I'd be, on the floor crying.
Yeah.
And the boys would just sort of step in. But I never missed a day.
Yeah, right.
And it just gave people permission to go mental health, suicide, single parenting, grief, trauma. And don't get me wrong, like we were a brekkie show. You don't want to talk about that stuff all the time. But everyone lives with their own shit.
Yeah.
And so as a breakfast show as well as a presenter, I was living with mine, and everyone knew that, even though it wasn't necessarily front and center all the time.
During those 5 weeks, did you get a point where you're like, I might need some support around this? Did you go and speak to someone?
Oh, I spoke to lots of people. I think the first thing was just the blindsidedness of it. Like, and that's why your book helped me so much, because I'd been dealing with his mental health stuff, but I just never thought. And you know what? A number of people, a lot of the fallout or the support of the messages I was getting back afterwards, and still to this day do, and I hope the book also does, is that people go, oh, this is what happened. Like, this is what happened to those children. Makes me cry. I'm fine. But what that did to my kids, his kids. You know, the celebrant at the funeral came over, and Lewin, who is my most emotionally articulate of the three boys, in terms of, asking questions, said, why didn't he leave a note? And Lewin's reaction was very angry. And he was kind of confronted, why didn't he leave a note? And the celebrant said, which I thought was just the most beautiful answer for a child, was, if he left a note, mate, he wouldn't have done it.
Huh.
And I don't know if that's true, but I think for a 14, 12 and 9-year-old, it stopped it being about them.
It's true. Yeah. What's unfortunate, and I've read the book, and I've also around at Brisbane at the time, people who don't understand all that stuff will just go, because Occam's razor some shit, and go, well, let's point some fingers.
Yeah.
And try to protect the sons, protect yourself, protect your career, because yes, you were very supported by work, but at some point, if you weren't able to hold it together, they're like, here's the box again, Robin.
Yeah, of course.
We saved it.
Of course.
Same box you want.
Same box. Bring it back the next time.
We got it from Office Works. It's the we're walking your box.
Yeah.
At some point, you got to get your shit together, and you got to find out how to live.
Yeah.
With this horrible thing that's happened, and move, and yet trying to withstand uninvited commentary from people who don't know the full story.
Oh, babe, when I went to Triple M, which is not that long ago, the vitriol, because I'm quite a, in radio in Brisbane, I'm quite a female chick. The vitriol, and people would say things, I now know why a husband killed himself.
Fuck.
But and that's not very long ago. But see, I'm laughing because I don't care. And I don't care what random people say about me. I have had to dig deeper than I have ever dug in my life for anything. And, if you read the book, you will discover that I did things that put me at the top of the list as to why Tony did it. And I think in some ways this would have been...
People are always in control of their choices, Robin. Don't you ever take... There's no responsibility you have for that part. None at all.
Except, though, what I will say is the thing that Tony and I were very similar in, and if he'd lived, it would have been great to have this conversation, is that you must start by forgiving yourself.
Yeah.
For all of it. And all of whatever it is as a human being we've done that has hurt the people we love and ourselves, right, to make the choices we make. And I made a pretty fucked up choice, and so did Tony. It's just his was a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yeah.
But, you know, the consequences of both of those choices are on those three young men. And that's why my book is so important to me, and it's why they finish the book, so they each have a chapter, is because this isn't my story, it's our story. And what they needed to have a voice, which they wanted to do. I didn't make them at all, because they're the collateral damage. And this is the other thing that I think, as the pendulum swings, as we move away from this egocentric, from Trump down, right? The world needs to shift to love and kindness. And that's what I hope this book does. It's a love story to myself, to the men in my life that I have loved, especially my three sons. But it's also how they have taken the shit and gone, yeah, it happened, but we're good.
Yeah. The reframe that I tried to find is things started to feel a lot better for me once I recognized I could look at something two ways. This is either going to happen to me or this is going to happen for me.
For me.
All right.
Yeah.
Because if it happens to me, I have no power. If it happens for me, it's like, well, okay, I don't have to like it. But I can do something with this. I can make a choice as to which direction I go from here. And then I have some power again. And, you know, you're right about it, getting woken up by your mum when you were a kid. Your dad was young. This is 56.
Yeah,
like 4 years older than I am now.
Yeah.
You know?
A year younger than me.
And for however much, that had to absolutely contribute in some way to the rocket ship that came in, that you then launched into your career with, and the work ethic that you had. That's all a part of that.
Yeah.
You know?
And I raised by a single mum who didn't have a choice. There was no childcare, like in 1980. It just was. So you got on with it.
Yeah. And not just that, like a single mum who then came out and like, now what do I do with this? It was a very different time. Again,
it was. And my grandmother was very concerned about what the neighbours would think.
Yes.
Right.
And it continues. The stigma around it continues, as you mentioned, when after Tony died by suicide, his family was so worried that, well, let's say something else. So part of me, I've got to be grateful for the way that you publicly put it out there, because there's too many men in Australia,
of course,
die by suicide every single day.
Yeah.
Like it's
and still do.
Terrifying. All right. 2 nights ago, I'm landing into Melbourne and a lightning bolt hit our plane. I'm sitting in row 28 and a lightning bolt hit our plane. It was unbelievable because like it hit and there was like a big pop and I felt like this percussive sound on the fuselage. And a second passed and I just started laughing like, how fucking great engineering. We're all alive. All right. But if that plane had gone down, it's probably about 120, 737, 160 people. All right. That's 2 weeks worth of suicides in Australia.
I know.
Okay. It just goes on and goes on. And if that happened, if there was a lightning strike plane accident worth of people every 2 weeks, we would stop aircraft until we figured it out. But it just carries on. But,
I had a conversation with someone that I used to work with, and it was so telling to me because it was, Are You OK Day?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, so do you talk to your friends about Are You OK Day? And he's like, no. And I said, why not? And he said, I'm not nervous about asking the question. I'm nervous about I don't know what to do with the answer.
Right.
And I'm like, okay. And I think that today, I only found out relatively recently that often a smart boy would be called if a kid had gone through some trauma or were homesick because it was a boarding school or stuff went down, because my boys weren't frightened of emotions. So, they would sit with a kid, and that's not to say that they'd make them spill their guts or do anything, but they held space for the feeling. So one thing that, you'll read in their chapters is they're just not frightened of big stuff. And they've dealt with it very differently. Don't get me wrong. My eldest son is not a very he doesn't talk huge amounts, and he was quite nervous about the book because he just didn't want to deal with it. And my middle son got very angry. He's not now, and had to work through all of that. But they just know that, and quite probably the worst thing that'll ever happen to them has happened to them twice in their adolescence.
Yeah.
So they have the coping mechanism to kind of go, and that's, to your point, you have a choice.
Yeah. The courage that it took to get married to Sean.
Yeah.
Right.
Best weekend of my life.
Yeah, right. To get married to Sean, it's already got a diagnosis. Like you've had the how many weeks and days chat, right?
Yeah.
What was it like to face that? What would you say to people about facing something like that?
As in cancer?
As in accepting, here I am in a relationship with someone and we're going to get married, even though I know where this is. We both know how this.
Okay, well, let me throw that back at you and go, what's the alternative? Like, are you going to stand there and go, and he says, because he wrote this open letter for the Courier Mail or the Sunday Mail in Brisbane, which was why a terminal cancer diagnosis is the best thing that ever happened to me. And he meant it.
Yeah.
Because it changed him profoundly, and his male relationships in particular. And he says in that article, when I asked her, I was so stoked because she didn't have to. I was damaged goods. And I'm like, and what? Like, what am I going to do? Yeah. Of course I'm going to do that. But to answer your question solely and utterly, and believe me, and I keep having to think, don't call him Spidey, is the love.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are we here for? I would do it again. I'm dating this wonderful man called Olivier, who's European, and if he rang and said, I've got cancer, I'd go, right, I know how to do this.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe that we're put on this planet to know what's coming up next. We're put on this planet to test who we are. And I will maintain till I take my last breath that ultimately what we need to be focusing on is love.
Yeah.
And love of self, love of family, and love of the planet, for goodness sake, love of every human being. Like, could you imagine how different the world would look if we had people who use that as their mantra for governing?
Very different.
Right?
Very different. But
Jacinda Ardern gave it a really good crack, and look what she achieved. A lot.
Here's the thing that I think there's a fallacy, there's a misconception, there's a lie told that people who want to lead with love also don't like money. Bullshit. I fucking love money. And I think if you lead with love, you're going to make more of it.
Yeah.
I
agree with that.
If you lead with empathy, you lead with compassion, you lead with a way of like, how can we be more inclusive? How can we make this better for all of us?
Yeah.
If we look after each other, we actually do. And it's a nicer place to be. We actually have become more productive.
Of course. And look after the planet, for goodness sake.
You have faced it. I don't know if you can see on the top of one of those guitars there. Can you see what's up there?
Is that a skull?
Yes, it is.
What is that?
That is a skull. I stole it from set.
A real skull?
No, it's a fake one. But I stole it from the set when I know he was Darren Hayes at the time.
Oh.
But when we were on The Masked Singer, there was a Grim Reaper and there was this big throne and it had like 100 of these skulls that were made of plastic art department of geniuses. But it's only ever used once. And as they're wheeling it on stage, most of these things fell off. I was like, put it in my motorbike bag and off home. But I look at that every single day, and it's a process called memento mori. It's an ancient thing. But I think about not only me dying, I think about my wife dying, I think about my kids dying. Mm-hmm. It's an uncomfortable thing.
Yes.
But it doesn't take long. It takes a breath or two. But it makes my life more amazing because I understand the finitude of it. Like that, no one who doesn't make it home today from a car accident planned it.
No.
Right? They just don't show up back at home. All right. Yeah. Well, none of us know what day it is. So I'm wondering, how do you think about death now? Like, you've obviously faced more death than most people.
Yeah.
Right.
But you are the sum total of your life experiences. So I don't think it's any coincidence that I learnt at 11 how to deal with grief and death, that it then gets repeated twice more. I am very spiritual, and I don't believe that this is it. And it's a very interesting process that I'm in at the moment because my mum is nearly 91 and quite extraordinary, lives in a retirement village, still drives and everything. But she is very black and white and practical and does not believe in any of this stuff. And I look at her and I think that must be terrifying, to just think that one day you're here, one day you're not. And in the book, that was probably one of the more courageous things, because I care so deeply about my spiritual practice that being criticized was kind of a bit more frightening to me. But, I see signs of things that prove that. And, I did this kids' science show for Channel 9 called Hot Science way back in the day. And there were two things that I retained from that show. One was flamingos aren't born pink, which is where the title of the book comes from.
Can you edify our listeners? Because I love this answer. How do they get pink?
They eat. It's the food they eat. It's the pink shrimp. And they grow up. They're these really kind of awkward grey little chicks, and then they become pink. And so that's sort of what my sort of metaphor and why the book, I wanted it to be hopeful and I desperately didn't want it to be like a 2-bit celebrity memoir, like, please no. That was the first one. The second one, which is probably more important to this conversation, is that it is a scientific fact. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. Think about that. Everyone listening, think about it. We are made up of energy. Where do we go? And if you've ever seen a thing, a dog, a cat, a person die, there is a moment. The spirit, the energy, the chi, whatever you want to call it, leaves the body.
Yeah.
Where does it go? So for me, that is why death is not frightening.
Yeah.
That is why death is the journey, and I'm just having the human experience. And, Sean, I really gave him a hard time, and I said, right, how are you going to show me? How are you going to show me you're around? And he's like, I'll come back as a kookaburra. And of course now, even still now, I see now people say to me, oh, is Sean in that kookaburra? I'm like, no, Sean is not in that kookaburra. I think Sean's gone to the light long time ago, but whatever energetically that I need, whatever is helping guide the magic of the planet is showing itself to me through that kookaburra, because that's a language I understand. So that's what happens when I die.
You've worked very, very hard across your career in radio. What is it that keeps you, people might go, it's the money. At some point, man, when that alarm goes off with a 3 in it, you're like, fuck, what is it that gets you out of bed?
I love it. Yeah. I love my job. And, I didn't, and it was interesting reading your book, because I didn't get those career opportunities in the same way. There was a moment where I was offered a job to go to the Channel 10 newsroom in Sydney as a journo, and then there was a radio job. And I think it was to be a producer at B105. Like, it wasn't even on air, but something told me that radio was going to be the better option. But then I had 3 children, and things like I didn't get to, I said I was going to be the next yarn event when I began and all that sort of stuff. So, my career has not gone the way that I thought it would. But having said that, and then, Tony dying, and I was never going to move to Sydney, even though this is where I grew up. And then Sean dying, it kind of kept me doing the same thing in the same place. But I love it. And it's not even the Brisbane part of it, it's the connection part of it. Oh. Like, I did a book signing yesterday in the Queen Street Mall. I was terrified, man, honestly. Like, it wasn't attached to the radio station. HarperCollins had organised it, and they'd put a table in the middle of the Queen Street Mall. And I'm thinking, who is going to come, right? Like, who? Like, it just felt like awkward and embarrassing. And anyway, there was a lineup, and for a full hour. But the thing was that people came. I had a woman just hug me and cry. There's a connection that, as a human being, that if I can deliver through the airwaves of Brisbane, and not always deep and meaningful, but just make people's days better, make them feel something.
Yeah.
Then what a gift. And it's so interesting that I'm, in terms of age, I'm coming to the end of my commercial radio career. The only one would be Amanda Keller, probably, who's older than me. And there just isn't a place as it stands in this business, unless I go the ABC, But part of what I hope Flamingos does is give me a platform. Next weekend I've got a brainstorm with Ruthie, my executive producer, and Kelly, my editor, to create a Flamingos podcast and I've got to work out the themes and stuff. We're still trying to navigate it, but I want to keep that connection going in a way where I'm not ashamed for being older.
Yeah.
And I can do that on a podcast. I don't know how to do a podcast like that, but I'm, because I feel like we need it.
Yeah.
We need to have stories of resilience and hope and love and kindness and look, there are a million podcasts, don't get me wrong, but I do have a unique skill set about talking about things and going there.
Yeah.
In single parenting, blah, 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 like you do, right? Like you either choose to take the things that happen to you and see them as a cross you bear on your back, or you see them as an opportunity to share and teach people. And so I guess that's the next thing for me. But why do I still radio? Because they still let me.
Let's just say, like, just hypothetical here, Robin Bailey. Let's say some giant venture capitalist rolls into town and says, guess what? I've just bought a brand new FM license. You, Robin Bailey, you're going to be CEO of my new radio network here in Australia. You get to set it up the way it should go. What would you want to happen? Because what policy are you going to put in place is going to have all the talent coming to you?
I think I would get really good people around me who are great communicators, because one of the things that I learned in all of this stuff in terms of just surviving and raising my boys was that you don't know everything. So get the people you trust who have got the same values as you, but then employ key people and learn. Like, I can tell you from a female talent perspective. I can't tell you in the same way from a young up and coming sales rep or but we've got to create the channels and the places where radio still matters. I actually said to one of the bosses at ARN before they got rid of us the last time and then brought us back, I said, for me as a career, you know what I'd love to do? I'd love to go out into the regions and help announcers, because no one outside of that studio understands the dynamic of what it takes to go to work with people that you may not like or that have pissed you off or have different politics or act like whatever, and be respectful enough to create something that other people will tune into. That is a unique, like a little landscape. That's a country in itself.
Yeah.
And, I'd love to be able to reinstill those kind of things. But, as you're saying it, I'm just like, All right,
then let me ask you a simple question. You get to start an entirely new maternity policy when it comes to Australian radio. What does it look like?
Maternity policy? Oh, wow, okay. It's got so much better than when I didn't get maternity leave. I got no money. I got nothing. Whereas now you can broadcast from home. You can have I think there's still a huge amount of pressure to come back. I'm just trying to think who's challenged that recently. Abby in Brisbane would probably be the one with the youngest children. Yeah. And I think she broadcasts from home. I think you have to be open. I think I think paternity leave needs to be a thing. I think this whole idea of babysitting your children still exists amongst
as a father,
men. Yeah.
Oh, get stuffed.
But it does.
It's ridiculous.
But it does. Yeah. In the book I talk about Tony, and I really do remember this. It was hard for him because, my eldest is now 26. There wasn't even a male toilet in the child community health centre. With the amount of times he'd turn up to something and, he would just be ignored because it was only women. But on the flip side, we'd go to social functions and someone would say, what do you do? And he'd go, I'm a stay-at-home dad. And men would turn around and walk away. Because what's the first question, still probably in social circles, do men ask each other? What do you do?
Yeah.
Women, it's often, oh, what are you wearing?
Yeah.
And that stigma is changing now around being a house husband, being whatever.
Self-stigma, I talk about this all the time. Self-stigma is way worse than any other stigma. I didn't want to be the kind of person that needed to take meds when I was first offered meds. So I didn't take them.
No, I read in your book.
Didn't work out well. All right.
You self-medicated a lot.
Did not. That also did not work out well. Look, I still, like I said, I don't like it, but I do it. All right. I will grit my teeth and not want to do that. but I'll do it because I know what happens if I don't. I know a couple more months from now, like by Christmas, it's going to be a very, very, very different story.
Oh, wow.
I hate that. I don't like that. That's what my brain is, all right? But
yeah, it's
better than the option, all right? Because I have been in that dark place. Self-stigma is the worst because, like, when I needed to stop drinking, I knew I had to, but I didn't want to admit that I couldn't do it. But then it got to the point where all that didn't matter. And I was just so desperate, I would have given anything to be delivered from the agony that I was in. And I knew enough to know that my brain was playing some pretty fucked up tricks on me. Yeah. And I was meditating, actually. I was meditating. And I was able to see those thoughts and go, whoa, that is fucking weird. If I'm thinking that's a good idea, something bad's happening here. Just like I'm so lucky.
Meditation is massive. Like, I meditate every day. I very much believe that has also got me through in a very different way. Just to center, to let the noise stop, you know?
Just to look at the noise and go, how did that?
It's interesting. Corey Oates, who's the former Bronco who's joined us, he is very upfront about his ADHD and was diagnosed at like 4. And so he credits his football career for his ADHD.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And credits, and like he's so great being with us because he's so green, and just learning to work out how to manage around him. And it's wonderful. Yeah. It's such a creative space. You know, we limit ourselves by not accepting all types of people.
Yeah. I work in an industry full of neurodiverse people.
Oh, absolutely.
I've never met a cameraman who likes sitting at a desk, ever.
No.
All right? Like, then you're terrible. It's fucking specky. You know, that's just it. But I think it's really important that, because with diversity, for me, diversity is ideas. All right? And we can always use more ideas. We can always use more ways of understanding how different people in a community think and feel. And what you do every morning is, we talk social cohesion. As our monoculture splits in pieces, all right, the radio is a massive part of holding the glue together. And that's the gift that radio, I think, still has. And that one talk break, if you're doing a phone or whatever, you can have people from all over the city with all different opinions who probably vote for all separate people.
Oh, yeah.
And every one of them will tell you about the last time they hit a pebble with a lawnmower, just like, you know, they do whatever funny you're talking about.
Oh, mate, start grass chat. Oh, my Lord. I work with 2 men who love their grass. I've never seen the phone light up more, ever. The amount of people who love their lawns.
I feel very strongly about lawns. I'm very anti-lawn, Robin.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, why are we having grass chat? I just can't. But
it gives dudes something to do. Look, thank you for writing this book. All right, really, okay, and thank you for coming around. We covered a fair bit.
We did,
and I hope people got something out of it. Do you feel okay?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I'm learning I find it fascinating what people want to talk to me about in all of this, you know, and that's good, because it means there are different messages for different people, which is what I want.
Right.
The radio stuff, and we took out a number of the sort of celebrity interviews and things because the balance of it wasn't right for me. Like, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, I was interested in the human.
Yeah.
So it's great. It's great. It's great to know what you think. And as I said to you, I desperately tried to get in touch with you after I finished listening to your book, because I'm profoundly dyslexic, so I can't read.
Yeah.
So I listened to you. I listened to you telling me.
My wife produced it.
There you go. And I thought, how am I going to find you? And then I felt, when the book comes out, I'll find you, and you found me.
Oh, I'm so happy. That makes me very well. I'll give a copy. I've got the other one in that cupboard. I'll give you a copy of the other one. Thanks so much for coming around.
Of course, it was great.